What the Actual Fork podcast is co-hosted by two intuitive eating registered dietitians, yours truly, Sammy Previtt, owner of Fine Food Freedom, and Jenna Warner, owner of Happy Strong Healthy. We can't stand diet culture bullshit and love keeping it real. Our mission is for all humans to believe that they are made for so much more than chasing a smaller body. We are also here to share with you that food can be fun and pleasurable again. Although we are medical professionals, we are human too. We are not afraid to share our deepest, darkest secrets and how years of our lives were taken by diet culture. We started this podcast so no human has to feel alone in their journey towards food freedom. So get comfy and join us for a casual convo where you can expect to laugh, cry, learn, and grow.
Welcome back to another episode of What the Actual Fork podcast. This episode was beautiful. And I don't really have another word to describe it besides that. Maybe honest. What would be your word?
I was going to say like transparent, open. I guess we should say who we had on maybe first. But
I like
that's
when we
fine
don't
too.
do that.
Yeah, it's like a teaser. Who is it going to be, right?
Who was this beautiful episode with?
Yes. But no, today we had Danielle Pascente Hall on, and her Instagram account is at Danielle Pascente. You know, she's been on before. So people have probably listened to our episode with her. I feel like she was one of our like first.
She was season 1, Drunk Dietitians. Yes.
She was an OG, and I feel like her episode was one of like the most listened or something. It was very prominent. And so today we had an idea of what we wanted to talk about, but then we like completely did not talk about any of that, and we ended up with
always the best.
Yes. So Danielle is a certified personal trainer, and she's the creator of Danielle Pascente training guides, and her account is all things finding joy in movement, and her little tagline is I help you believe in your damn self. But today took a turn into the postpartum world.
Yeah. And, trigger warning for anyone who is pregnant and doesn't want to talk about postpartum stuff. I know I was that person. Like, I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to talk about just like the birth and like what I needed to prepare for that. And then I figured I'd figure it out. Not saying that that's the right thing to do, but that was my mindset. So just a trigger warning. We do talk about, the postpartum days, the darker times, the emotions, the feelings, all things that are super important to talk about. But if you're not in the headspace to hear it or talk about it, definitely just want to put that out there to you.
I'm glad you said that. And I think that's also like, we said this on the episode. I think I said how like us three are all postpartum, different times postpartum, but also like have such different experiences. And I think it's funny because I was like the complete opposite of you. I wanted to know and I was like interviewing you, and like we had Dylan Murphy on the podcast. We had all these
people. That's a good one.
Tell me about your postpartum experience. Tell me about your postpartum. And I just like wanted to know everybody's, but that still isn't going to prepare you because you're going to have your own experience. And then
I was literally the opposite. Like I would be like, oh, you're going to tell your birth story. I'm going to leave.
Really? That is so funny. Yeah. And I think that's how Cam was. And we had, Freckled Foodie on, right?
Yes.
She was talking I remember you guys both like aligned on that, and I was like, oh, that's funny because I'm like doing a research project on birth and like postpartum, basically trying to figure it out,
which has worked well for you, so that's all that matters. I don't want to let this go though before we do a quick, because we didn't do this with Danielle, just a quick WTAF moment of either the week or the month. Do you have one?
I'm trying to think.
Anything happen in the social world today?
I like refuse to talk about the social media world anymore or trolls. So I'm trying to think of a real life one. Oh, this will make you laugh because this isn't like, it isn't a real one, but it kind of is. So last night, my mom, my husband, and I were sitting down for dinner, and my husband, like, we got shepherd's pie from Costco. Shout out to Costco shepherd's pie. It's fucking delicious. You just pop it in the oven. And my husband cut like big slices, I guess, or just slices. I don't know. And my mom made some comment that was like, whoa, that's a big slice. And he just looked over and said, my plate, my business. And I knew that you
favorite line.
You would love that because from our husband pod.
Matt still says it to me.
Yes.
He
And she like,
still
again,
says it.
my mom listens to our podcast. She didn't mean it in like a way, but we like all laughed and joked about it. And then it made me
Love
think
you,
of
Sue.
you guys. Yeah.
Matt, my husband, still talks about when is husband pod number 2 gonna film? I'm like, one day we'll make it like dad pod.
Yes.
We'll go
I was
from
gonna say
there.
dad pod. I love that.
I would say for me, and mine is social related. And, I've really tried hard not to look at like the main offender charlatan pages recently, just because they're just so full of baloney and bullshit. But I was tagged in one today that I didn't respond to. I chose to respond to a different one, but about like this one creator who's a carnivore just wearing a shirt that says kale is bullshit and just like walking around the grocery store with kales, like talking about how bad it is. And like, I just want to remind you guys that like they make shit up. Like, he's not a doctor, even though it says MD in his profile. Like, there's got to be a board that like we could take him down for that. But like, unless those are his initials, I don't know. But like, we just like need to just be aware that no amount of stitches and comments on these pages and dietitians or professionals or researchers like combating this advice is going to make them stop. So we just have to like collectively understand that like they make shit up. like
I think we should
like
do an
let it go.
entire I'm glad you brought that up. And I think we could do an entire episode, like a really good episode about like credibility, because even you saying like they're not a doctor, like one of the biggest trolls on my account is a doctor telling me that I'm like bullshit. And so it's so interesting because it's like, oh, well, you have no nutrition training. And people are like, you won't talk back to this doctor. And I'm like, because he's a doctor. Like, and so I think like we could do an entire episode on like just credibility, how people can make sure their feed is a safe place. Like there's so much on social media.
I have
right
an
now.
idea of a guest we can bring on for that. So we should chat
Ooh,
about that.
okay.
I have a good idea. Excellent. All right. So
Love
let's
it.
get into this episode, and we have some work to do. Enjoy, guys. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the What the Actual Fork Pod. We have one of our favorite guests back for a second round, and we're so excited. Danielle, thank you for
Oh, I'm so excited. Thanks for having me back. Like,
being
you guys want to talk to me again?
like the last episode, we didn't even get to talk about your hair, and I just feel like I've been on a hair journey ever since that episode, thinking about all of the tips from you. So this episode might have to include some of that.
Which I feel like the tips don't even like align anymore because postpartum hair loss has been a real thing for me.
Wait,
Yeah.
we didn't even talk about this before we clicked go, but I just put up a TikTok about that. And Jenna, I know you commented on it because I was like, oh, I guess I'm not experiencing postpartum hair loss. And then I just
3
hit
months.
the 4-month mark, and I like showered the other day and
Yep.
screamed at how much hair came out in my hands when I was floored. So wait, I
Yeah.
want to know for you, because you have so much hair. Like when you
Yeah.
first started losing it, was it just like unbelievable amounts?
Well, it's crazy because like I started losing it in first trimester and everyone's like, that's weird. Your hair's supposed to be growing. And I was like, what?
Because she's a girl.
This early. Yeah. And
K-pop,
so
yeah.
I mean,
Girls
first
suck your
trimester
beauty.
was crazy because I was like pulling it out in globs. And I even talked to my OB about it because I was like, I thought your hair is supposed to grow around this time. And then second and third were fine. I felt like it did start regrowth and I started using all these serums and stuff because I was trying to figure it out. So I think that helped. And then postpartum, yeah, it was right around like the 2 to 3 month mark. It started really falling out again. And so then I've gotten back on my little serum routine. But I will say this, I mean, you guys know how much hair I have. I feel so selfish even being like, I have hair loss. Like I can't imagine this amount of hair coming out of a head with thinner hair or, not a lot of hair and you're just like seeing all your hair fall out because I have a lot to give. And so this is not one of the postpartum things that really has affected me whatsoever, but it's just something I notice.
You're so kind. I remember like one of the third nights, I think it was the third or fourth night home with Noah. I remember waking up in the morning and being like, the hair loss has started already. But it was just because I was so sweaty because I was sweating so much
Yes.
when I sleep that I would wake up and my hair would be matted to my head.
Yeah. I'm still sweating 6 months later from the hormones. Like, I'm not even kidding. Wait, because I'm still like pumping and breastfeeding. And I feel like if they get too full, my whole temp, like I woke up the other night, I had a temperature and Matt's like, are you good? Because you feel like an oven. Like every part of you is hot. I was like, I know I feel hot. I'm dizzy. I feel like I'm getting like seeing stars. And he's like, you go okay, let's get you some ice packs. I'm like, this is the postpartum stuff that nobody talks about. I'm like, it's 6 months later and I'm still having hot flashes at night. It's nuts.
Those first few nights postpartum, like when you come home though, like it felt like a tsunami hit the bed. Like I would lay a towel down and Luke's like, don't you want to be on our sheets? I'm like, no, like
No.
no, like I'm just dripping fluid out of my body. My tits are leaking. I'm bleeding. I'm sweating. Like I can't.
Yo. Yeah, it's real. I actually laid a chuck down, like the hospital gave us chucks, those huge diaper pads. And I just told Matt, I was like, I think it's probably smart of us to cover the bed in these. Like, I don't know what's happening, but yeah, my whole body's leaking. So here we are.
Doesn't the sweat smell different now? Like, sorry if that's TMI, but like I stink now when I work out. And it's been almost 2 years. Like I'm a sweater, but I was never like a stinky sweater. Like now I smell
I've
myself.
heard that. I've heard that before, but this is a whole nother topic, but I still don't have smell from COVID a year and 3 months ago.
Yes.
So I can't smell myself. I actually think that's more kind of odd because I've heard that your scent is different postpartum. And I'm like, well, wouldn't know that. So I'm probably just going out like wreaking havoc, just not being able to smell my own damn self. Yeah, I don't know. But that's again a whole nother topic. It's so crazy that I still can't smell. But yeah.
It is.
That is insane. I remember you posting something about that, but I did not know that it's still going
Yeah.
on.
I know. I can taste now, which is great. So the taste came back after I had Kennedy. So it was about 11 months. Yeah, 11 months after COVID, I got my taste back, which has been amazing. As you guys love and know food, it was so hard to not be able to taste anything.
Yes.
And so yeah, I got that back after I had her, and then this smells still super wonky. We're working through it.
So I feel like we just kind of hopped in, but so Danielle, what's changed since the last time you've been on the podcast?
I know. Oh my gosh. It's crazy. Well, thanks for having me back again. But yeah, I've had a baby since the last time. I've moved to another state. Still doing similar things with the business. So finding joy and movement, which is so different these days, postpartum. Like it's a trip. But other than that, like still doing the same things with my community and the programs and doing HIIT and strength training. And then, of course, trying to balance it all out with a newborn.
Who we luckily got to see because there were a little audio difficulties, which thankfully that means we got to see little Kenny Pop, who is so cute, by the way.
Oh my God.
She's so darn cute.
Her legs don't stop moving. It's like the cutest thing ever. Like,
and
she's just like her mama.
I blame myself. Some days, you guys, I'm like, I regret working out during pregnancy. Some days I genuinely say that because she never stops. But postpartum, with coming back into movement, has been, I feel, a lot easier because of the amount of work, like of movement that I did during. So that's been nice, but she sends it. Like she is constantly moving her legs, her arms, everything. She must be moving.
I relate so hard, Danielle. First of all, I did yours. I don't remember which program I did, but I did one of your programs when I was pregnant and it was the best.
Nice.
Nice. And Noah does not. He's almost 2. We went to a class yesterday. It was a bunch of girls. I don't know if it's a girl versus boy thing when they're toddlers, but like all the little girls were like sitting and happy and playing, and Noah was opening every door, running back and forth. And they were like, does he ever stop? And I was like, never unless he's sleeping.
Like, exactly. That's what I say. I'm like, when she's sleeping is when she's chill.
That's it.
Oh my gosh.
I hear that.
And she is sleeping again because last time I touched base with you, you were in the midst of a 4-month regression, or progression that I'm going to knock on wood Sienna turns 4 months, like, while we're gone. So
Hey, it won't be your problem.
I know, maybe that's a good thing, honestly. Sleep is it's tough for sure. I think Kennedy's always kind of been a good-ish. What's even good? I hate this conversation because it could go so many ways, but she has traditionally from birth been able to kind of sleep well or sleep in any environments. But when the 4 month sleep regression progression hit with all the developmental stuff and then getting her out of the swaddle, the transition out of that into the crib, it was just woo. We're coming out the other end, but it took probably 9 weeks of us, I'm not even joking, like 2, 3 hours of sleep per night for 9 weeks, which felt like an eternity. And we were trying to figure it out, but also there's so many ways you can do. Everybody parents differently. Some people sleep train, other people don't. I have a trigger to crying, and so that's been really difficult with the sleep, but I think we have kind of come out the other side. So yeah, she is sleeping better, and we are all sleeping better at the moment. And with good nighttime sleep came some really shitty naps and daytime sleep. So we're trying to navigate that. I swear if it's not like one thing, it's another, but
100%.
you're just trying to navigate it all. But I can't even tell you guys, and I know you both know, but being sleep deprived is so difficult. And I thought I'd be resilient with it because I've run my own business for years and it comes with a lot of late nights and just with the nature of the job and traveling, being on tour the last year, even like I'm not a stranger to not a lot of sleep. But when it's back to back to back to back days, and then you wake up, you don't get to chill, you don't get to recover, you go right back into being on is so mentally taxing to the point where you feel like you're crazy. And I just felt like we were really in that for the last 9 weeks, being like, I don't know if I will ever be out of this. You just feel like you're so deep in. And then dealing with all the hormones and stuff is just, it's wild.
There was a dietitian that we actually interviewed on the podcast. Shout out to Nikki Petroselli if you're still listening. I remember she texted me in like the throes of that time for us, and she said, "I just want to remind you or tell you if you've never heard this, but that like the U.S. military is trained to, I think it was the way that they torture
Yeah.
people is with sleep
Yeah.
deprivation." And she was like, "It is a form of torture. It will get
Mhm.
better, but just know that what you're feeling is so normal." Cause like I was reaching the point where like I didn't have empathy left. And I'm like, I'm supposed to have empathy for things that are going on. But like when you're so exhausted and like you can't see straight, like how do
Yeah.
I care for another living being when like I can't yeah, that was really
Yeah.
hard.
It's kind of numbing. That's how I describe it to Matt sometimes, is I'm like, sometimes I feel numb on the days that we're really in it because I'm just staring off. Like I'll be holding her, but staring off into blank space, just being like, what am I doing? Or I don't feel happy, or I don't feel, and it is always the nights or days where I'm sleep deprived that I feel this numbness or I feel this down, bluesy, depression almost feelings come up with the sleep deprivation. So it's just, yeah, it's harder than I thought it would be. I'll say that.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Jenna and I have been talking about how we want to do a lot more mom specific episodes too, just because so much has changed for us as well. And
Hmm.
I think these are really important conversations that like there's no such thing as talking about it too much because
Hmm.
these are the things that you don't hear a lot. And before, if anyone wants to have kids, it's important to just know, like you said, Jenna, you're not alone if you're experiencing this and struggling for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I think postpartum conversations are so important, and I think it's harder to find them. It's harder to find them as a or in comparison to what is life like now with a baby, right? And we constantly hear and see in mainstream media how joyous and how um, your life changes for the better. And all those things are true. I do believe all those things are true. But I do think the less talked about stuff is some of the darker sides of postpartum, and not everybody experiences them the same, but I definitely have been so humbled by postpartum in all the ways. Like, I just never expected it to be what it is on both ends of the spectrum, both beautiful and also hellacious at times, you know?
Yes.
It's really crazy. And doesn't it, for me personally, it makes me also think back to years as being a young dietitian and telling new moms to fucking prioritize
Oh my
themselves.
God.
Like
I
I thought,
can't.
like that was one of the first things that I thought of. Like when I'm like holding this baby, I haven't showered in a week. Like haven't made a meal. And I used to tell women, like, make time for yourself. Like, what the fuck was wrong with
I
me?
I'm so glad that you said that, and that yes, we can all laugh because we're all in a different place, but I'm actually gonna tell a story that's I don't even know if I've ever told this story, but it's really good. I used to have these same similar messages, and I know that we've talked about our past and how we did things and all the things. But I remember I had a really close friend, and she was a mom long before me. I mean, probably right around the time maybe I started my business 6, 7 years ago. And I was very much just diet culture, toxic movement messaging. And I didn't realize it at the time, right? And so she had just had a baby. And I remember being on the phone with her and saying, like, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. Like, girl, just make time. And I say it with this annoying tone because I'm like, I can't believe she was calling me to essentially because she was at a low point postpartum and I was her friend and she was calling me like I have called all of my mom friends at many times postpartum to be like, am I crazy? Here's what I'm feeling. And my response to her was, you should really find time to move. It just makes me want to slap or punch myself in the face. It's so terrible. But Jenna, like you were saying, I mean, I'm so glad to be on the other side of that messaging, but now more so than ever as a mom, you just realize things you would have never understood unless you've kind of walked this path. And it just, wow, it makes you so much more well versed in what moms are going through so that you really can be a better coach, a better friend, a better anything to moms that are coming to you. Because I can't believe I still to this day flash back to that particular conversation now as a mom. And I'm like, girl, bye. What were you thinking? You know?
Thank you for that story. And that reminds me of Jenna has always said, like, if we could go back in time and like know how to support friends, right, that were newly
Hmm.
postpartum, because you think back to when you're like, let me hold your baby, or like, and then you just like
Yeah.
breeze by the mom, right?
Yes.
And it's like until you go through it, or if you know, maybe if you had like a sister or someone like super close to you that has kids and you grew up with that. Like, I didn't grow up with any babies close to me, or like my friends weren't having babies yet. Like, it was just, I didn't know, but like that was like, Jenna, I will never forget you saying that. And that kind of reminds me of that story because there's so many people I had to like apologize to because I was just like,
Yes.
I wasn't there for you at all. Whether it was
Yep.
saying something like that or just not saying anything at all, right? Not saying like, how can I support you? Can I send you food? Like, it was all just,
Yeah.
it was always about the baby, and it should be about the mom.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do now with new moms or even friends that are new moms is the first thing that flies out of my mouth is, how are you? Like, it's the simplest phrase, but at the end of the day, it comes from the depths of my soul when I ask you, how are you postpartum? Because I'm asking you how you are. I'm not I love the baby. I hope they're great. And I'm going to ask about the baby, but I want first to know about how you're doing. And I'll ask it in a way that's just like, let it out to me if you want. I'm here to hold space. Cause half the time I feel like that's what I wanted is just friends or family who are going to hold space and not invalidate any feelings, but just allow me to speak freely without judgment.
It's so important. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely looking back, like it wasn't diagnosed, but I definitely had, more than just like a little sadness, but it was like postpartum anxiety, depression. But like people used to say, "Oh, the baby blues are so normal." And that used to piss me off because it's
Mhm.
so much more than the baby blues. And I think as female entrepreneurs, I don't know if it's different. I don't know if it was just me feeling it. So I'll share just from my own perspective. But even though I was taking off time from work little bit, there was this constant like rattle in the back of my head of like, well, this is your business. This is something that like you don't want to let go. Like there's always something to be doing. When I had the 5 minutes to sleep while the baby slept, like, but that didn't
Mhm.
happen, right? Like
Mhm.
it was that messaging plus this baby blues are normal. But I was also like, what's the right word? Just sad about the life that I no longer had while I was
Yeah.
happy for the life that I now have, right? And the idea that both of these emotions could exist at the same time was really hard for me, especially in the beginning, to wrap my head around. And when I had the ability to go back to work, it's still been hard for me.
Yeah. It just is, and it's that what you just said about kind of mourning your past life is a feeling I didn't really see coming. I thought it would be kind of a smoother transition. I don't know why I thought that, but I just never had considered that feeling. But that was a big one for me, was just missing Matt and I, and missing, and you feel guilty for that. So then you further add to that feeling of like, let's block this emotion out because you're not allowed to feel this way. You just had a baby, you should enjoy, look like, you should be so grateful. And yes, I am all those things, but I also was experiencing that shift and the huge adjustment, huge life adjustment of the fact that you're no longer Matt's number one priority. You're no longer the number one priority at all because your baby is. And that's okay, but you're allowed to have feelings with that. And so I've I'm still experiencing them. I'm only 6 months, and Sammy, I don't know if you can speak into this as well, but I just feel like that's one of those little talked about things, is kind of mourning that past life during moments and during times, and just almost like longing for certain things from the past life, but also appreciating obviously where you are now.
Yes, I think that's such a great point you bring up, both of you. And I think there's so many different facets of life where I think that can be true, but postpartum is definitely one of those times where it's just, ugh. And it's so interesting too, because us three have all had such a different experience, right? And like, so we're all three postpartum moms. We're all at different stages. I'm at 4 months, Danielle, you're at six
Mhm.
months, and Jenny, you're almost at 2 years. And as you guys know, like, we really struggled to get pregnant. So
Yeah.
we went through like such a transformational shift and a lot of grieving, like before we got pregnant, if that makes sense. Like, so not that it's been rainbows and butterflies, want to make that very clear, is not what I'm saying. But like, I just feel like we have a different experience because of what we went through to get to this point. Um,
Absolutely.
so it's just, I think fertility journeys all the way from like when you want to get pregnant to like until the baby comes out, and then and then also postpartum continuing, it's just so different for everyone. And Jenna, I feel like Jenna's like my North Star, and you too, Danielle. I had many DMs with Danielle when I was figuring out pumping. I'm like, what do I do? What do you do? And she led me through. But just that, like, the journey doesn't stop when the baby pops out, because I
Mhm.
think that is a narrative that is so talked about, that it's like that's just the beginning, and there's so
I
much
Yeah.
gonna change.
I
Yeah,
think we'll
totally.
we'll forever be postpartum at this point, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the conversation that I think is also misunderstood. It's like your postpartum visit at 6 weeks is meaningless. Like we don't even need to talk about that. I know we all agree. But
Yeah.
I'm again, Noah's 20 months old. Like I still consider myself postpartum because nothing from my life before Noah is the same now in all great ways and also different ways. Like I'm not going to say everything's better, everything's different, and it's just it's taken me, and I've always said this, like anybody who knows me knows that I've said this, like I'm a very selfish person by nature and so is my husband. So for the two of us to, become less selfish and
Yeah.
reprioritize and reshift, our lives to place the priority on the most important thing wasn't just like this snap of a finger and it was done. Me classically, like I like to wake up early and like do a ton of shit in the morning. And for a whole year and a half almost, when Noah didn't really have a sleep schedule, like I couldn't do that. And I was like
Yeah.
a shell of a person waking up and then like trying to get things done during his first nap. It just like didn't happen. And it's hard. It's
Yeah.
different. It's all the
Yeah.
things.
There's so many things, but I have something. I know, Jenna, you have stuff you want to get to, but I want to bring up real quick because I feel like, only because I know personally, because Danielle helped me so much. You've been so candid on social media with like the recovery process of postpartum after you had a vaginal delivery, correct?
Yeah.
From what I
Yeah.
remember. And so you were so helpful. Like, I think I went on your Amazon and just like ordered literally everything that you told me to get. But I feel like there's a lot of parallels of diet culture social media and like postpartum social media, and you had kind of touched on that briefly, but how like just the rainbows and the butterflies and like here's how you're supposed to enjoy life is always what's highlighted on social, because no one's going to put up a video of their baby fucking losing it, right?
Right.
And I think that that's something, it sounds so silly, but Luke and I like didn't know how much babies cried. Like, we were like, what's wrong with her? Like,
yes,
didn't know. And so I feel like that's like that same thing of like with diet culture, people are just putting up like the before and afters, right? Like these beautiful photos of them, but then they're not showing themselves like counting calories, killing themselves, doing all these things, right? So I feel like you did such a great job of that postpartum like recovery of like your body and like healing. Did you know you were going to be like that postpartum, or did you just kind of like allow that space and see if you wanted to share? Like, did you have a plan of sharing that kind of stuff?
No. I think actually you and I went live right before I had the baby on Instagram, and you were like, so what's your plan work-wise? I was like, I'm going to take off work till the fall. Like, I literally wasn't going to post anything. I was like, I'm just going to hang out with my baby and like not do Instagram. And then I
that
was like,
switched.
it's so funny saying it now. But then I was like, I feel really alone. Like once the baby came out and I was like, oh, this isn't what everyone's made it out to be. Like this isn't so the baby bliss, which there were moments of that, of course, but like my vagina was ripped open. I could not sit down. I was supposed to breastfeed. What the fuck am I gonna do? Breastfeed on all fours? Like I have 2 second-degree tears on my vag. Like I cannot operate right now. And so I think I actually took to social media to feel like I wasn't alone. It sounds weird, but I was like, I just want to see if what I'm feeling is normal because I've never done this before. And so I decided, I think it was 2 days postpartum, we had that pediatrician checkup. And I cried the entire way over there because my vagina hurt so bad that I couldn't sit in the car. Like I could not sit in a seat in the car. And so I just cried all the way over there. And I got onto social afterwards and I explained that. I explained that I had 2 second-degree tears and it's incredibly uncomfortable and my boobs are ripped off my body and my nipples are chapped and a slash bleeding. So I just shared it. I then decided to continue sharing after all the messages of saying thank you for just normalizing this hard stuff because I don't ever see it, or I don't see it often, or this is not really talked about, especially the tearing. Like, obviously, that's a little TMI, but I was trying to just share with vaginal delivery, like tearing's what happens.
Totally normal.
Yeah, like this is what I used. I mean, the numbing spray that I used was honestly got me through the frozen padsicles from Freedom Mom. I was just like living in this shit. But those were things that helped me. And in turn, I do feel like what I shared postpartum helped, even if it helped one person, or one person got the Freedom Mom pack and the Dermaplast spray and knew what was coming, then I had done an okay job with that. And I wanted to I wanted other moms to have that. So it felt natural to continue doing it. I never pre-decided this. I just kept sharing as things came. With that came a lot of unsolicited advice. With that came a lot of trolls. With that came a lot of mom know-it-alls when I was never asking for it. So I've had to make some serious boundaries in that department, and it's pretty easy with a child now. I'm just like, I don't have time for this shit. I have my beautiful daughter in front of my face, like, please do not DM me that, you know?
Yes.
So just boundaries. But yeah, to answer your question, I never planned on sharing as much as I have postpartum, but I do feel like it's helped normalize some of the tougher conversations that I would love to see more of. And in turn, I've found a lot of helpful accounts as well that are talking about this every single day, that have made this their life's work to continue talking about postpartum anxiety, depression, etc.
I literally wrote down, I love to make sure I know, like said to you, I love the way that you write on your stories. Like, I'm not asking for advice, I'm just sharing,
Yeah.
because I think it's so important, because people say the dumbest things. And I just want
Mhm.
to like add on to that, as you know, being past that stage and in a new stage, what I have found so helpful now is like, my son has gone through the hitting stage, the biting stage, the tantrums. Like, I know they continue, but like, not all kids, quote unquote, according to like the perfect influencer world, not all kids hit and bite, right? Or they don't shove or push or whatever it is. My kid has done all of them. And like,
Yeah.
when I would see these accounts where it was like, you know, perfect parenting and gentle parenting, this and that, things I believe in, but that weren't addressing that like these child behaviors are normal. It's really
Yeah.
hard, right? And
Yeah.
so I like, just to add on to that for moms listening or parents listening, um that are kids are a little bit older, like those are the accounts that I now seek out too, are the ones that can teach me things, and the ones that are normalizing those behaviors and not saying like, this is a reflection on you. Like, no, this is
Yes.
just part of their growing up and toddlerhood and whatever else. So when you guys are ready for toddler stuff, accounts to follow, I got you. But
Yeah.
it just keeps going. Like,
It's just like, but and to touch on that too, every kid is different. Every baby is different. And so when people, give advice, I know they're coming from a good place, but at the same time, like if I were to give my friend advice, I saw a meme about this, I'd be like, hey, here's what worked, but honestly, may not work for you. You may have a totally different baby.
You definitely said that to me. You're like, okay, here's what I did, but
Yeah.
disclaimer, this might not work
Disclaimer.
for you.
Yeah. And I always say that. And that some of my best friends that give me advice too, they say that too. They're like, hey, I'm going to tell you everything you want to know to ease any worries or give you some sense of comfortability. But at the end of the day, Kennedy's going to do what Kennedy's going to do. So take this with a grain of salt. And a lot of that advice has really helped. I mean, it's everybody's different, everybody sleeps different, everybody has different temperaments. Like Kennedy is super sensitive to stimulus, right?
mm.
And all anyone wants to do when they come over is stimulate the shit out of her. And I have to kind of take the reins and be the mom and say, hey, like, I know my daughter well, she doesn't like loud sounds, she doesn't like clicking or big hand gestures or loud sounds when she eats. Like, I have to explain this to people because I know that that's a thing for her and she cannot advocate for herself. So it's like learning how to parent and learning too that every baby is different and you just can't generalize these things.
Mm, I love this conversation. And I love how the root of all of the things we've been talking about too is just like normalizing everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
hoping that whoever, like you said before, Danielle, when you were sharing those things on your Instagram story, like if just one person could hear the conversation, that it would do its job. And the same thing goes right now. Like if just one new mom or like about to be a new mom hears this episode and can hear some of the things that we're saying, or like you said, Jenna, someone that's going into toddlerhood, like just normalizing, like it's okay, you're doing a
Mm-hmm.
great job, like other people experience this stuff too.
Yep. Yep.
I think, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this too, but one of my friends told me, when I was in the thick of it, maybe 5 months, 6 months. I think Noah's regression was around 5 months. Progression, sorry. I love how you say that.
I
But
know.
that one was really tough for me. And I remember like crying on a voice memo to a friend, and she said, Jenna, you need to tap out. for a couple minutes. If
Yeah.
he's safe, leave him in the crib. If nobody's there to help you, leave him in the crib for a couple minutes where you know he's safe, he's alone, you know, he can't hurt himself, and take a couple breaths like away from him. And I think that there's a lot of messaging and conversation about like, you know, not doing that, or not talking about that, so that moms don't know that
Mhm.
that's okay. And I
Yeah.
do think that like it's important to just say out loud that like you can reach a breaking point and like it's
Yeah.
okay to tap your partner in, or just tap yourself out for like even a minute and just reset yourself so that you can continue to be the best parent for your baby. I read something somewhere that was like, no other job in the entire world requires and asks the patience that is required to be a mother.
Yeah,
Like
I mean, yeah, it's
constant.
true. It's constant self-regulation. That's what I say. Like you're gonna feel like you've reached your breaking point so many times, and I've had to learn to, instead of guilting myself by saying you should be fine, suck it up, like do your job. I've had to just say, walk outside, put on headphones, lock yourself in the car. Like I can't tell you, and I know this is rooted in privilege that I have a husband who is hands-on. I understand that privilege every single day. But some days I truly am like, Matt, I need 10 minutes. And I walk to the car and I just put on music, or I put my headphones in when she's having a crying episode. And I know that that's a trigger for me and I'm getting anxiety and I'm heating up and I'm getting red from rage. I know that I have to tap out, because me being there in that situation and keeping myself there is unhealthy for all parties involved. And again, I know this is being said from a place of privilege because I have Matt. He is helping to raise this baby and this child. And so I can't imagine it any other way, where you are truly having to show up 24/7 and you don't get that break. So, but taking those even tiny ones, Jenna, that's such a good point, is just kind of normalizing that if you can do it, because sometimes it really is hard. It boils over and you feel like you're going to break. And those are the moments where I'm like, I gotta take a moment. I gotta take a beat, even if it's 2 minutes.
Mm, so good. I feel like this conversation has gone a completely different direction than we thought it
I
did,
know.
but I love it because I think it's so needed. And obviously you're wearing your super cute merch right now. We're staring at your DP Fit crew neck there, a little tie dye, looks like
Yay.
a little retro font. Love it.
I know
So
we were supposed to talk about fitness and we talked about postpartum the whole time.
sorry, but how has, kind of a question to lead us to the end of the episode, how has your business shifted since Kennedy has come into the picture? How do you service clients differently? What has been the biggest change for you as an entrepreneur?
I think just the amount of hours that I spend doing what I do. When I had more time, I was a lot more hands-on in the DMs with customers, constantly feeling like I could do it all myself. And postpartum has definitely taught me that you cannot do it all yourself. You need help. You need some team members, maybe. You need to get out of the DMs. Like, there are better uses of your time at this moment. And honestly, I just can't. I don't have time. So the only thing that's shifted is I've become just a little more, not even a lot. Like, my crew would probably be like, no, she hasn't. But I feel I've become a little more hands off, and especially on the weekends. I used to work straight through the weekends. I probably could still to this day, and I still do a little bit of work on the weekends. But now I just kind of log off of Instagram, share only what I want, if I want, and enjoy that time with my daughter. And yeah, when you have this little one right in front of you, just beaming with joy and excitement. And I've caught myself in moments where I am not beaming with joy and excitement. I'm in my work. I'm like, this is dumb. Like, what's going to get done right now at this moment when she clearly like needs me or wants to play or like is having a good time, or I'm missing a moment. Like, I'm missing her laughing with Matt. I'm like, stop it, put down your phone. It's things like that where postpartum almost helps to put everything into perspective. Like, you have this beautiful being in front of you that is just a light and you're experiencing the world through her eyes. Don't you want to be there for that? I think that's right there is the biggest shift that this can wait. So I've been a little more balanced in my work. That being said, I love working. I am an entrepreneur. I love what I do for a living. So I'll never stop doing that. And I have enjoyed getting back to it postpartum. It just looks different.
I love everything that you just said, but specifically about kind of shifting this conversation to the joys of postpartum, because yes, the conversation about the dark places is it's important, but it does come with some like beautiful lessons, not
Mhm.
necessarily like the baby bliss,
Yes.
right? But like the lessons of slowing down. As three entrepreneurs on this screen, like between the three of us prior to kids, we probably worked 300 hours a week, right? Like
Mhm.
it's just there's always something to do, and that mindset plus like the hustle and bustle world that we live in, competition, and TikTok exploded and new Instagram exploded during our pregnancies, right? Like
Yeah.
this COVID time. I mean, I delivered in like the height of COVID. Like this was all just like coming to a head at that time too, and it's like this FOMO that can become so unhealthy. But
Yeah.
like becoming a parent has like truly taught me the benefits of putting the phone down, slowing down, like appreciating the little things. Like a child gets the most excited over like a leaf. Like
Yeah.
right, and like if we could have a minuscule little piece of that happiness like throughout our days, like it's just all worth it. And those are things that I needed those reminders as well.
Yeah, and experiencing it all for the first time. I don't know if we'll have another, it's and so I just treat it as though this is the first and also the last time you're experiencing these things, and you want to just be present for that. It's such a special time.
True.
So beautifully said. So for those who are listening who are like, okay, they're probably postpartum because obviously we have to put some type of postpartum tagline on this title for sure. Um, any moms out there or anybody who's pregnant that wants to look into movement, can you just share a little bit before we go where they can find
Yeah.
you and what are some of the things that you do offer that could help them with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I stayed training during my pregnancy, and I know that's what I do. I even though we did not talk about that much, that's what I do is, movement, exercise, strength training, and hip. But I did that during my pregnancy, and then postpartum has also looked really differently. And I know we could probably touch on that on a whole episode of just like movement and the pressures to move postpartum and all and the clearance or lack thereof and all the things. But yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram. I've shared all of my movement both during pregnancy, postpartum, and just in a fairly real fashion, and what I'm experiencing in real time. So you can find me on Instagram at Danielle Pascente. I'm sure you guys will put that somewhere in the show notes. But yeah, I don't it's hard to not wanna dive into a lot of different topics right now on this very thing, but I hope that if you're listening and you're postpartum, that you don't ever feel the pressure to move your body and move it too quickly and not get clearance and not see a physical therapist for your pelvic floor. If you're experiencing any pelvic floor dysfunction, if you are recovering from a C-section, don't let societal's bullshit standards tell you that you need to be doing this on a timeline. Honestly, it's a process and a journey, and I'm an outlier because I'm incredibly motivated and I fucking love to move, but I understand that is not everyone. And so my approach on my account, no matter if you see me moving or not, is that you should be taking your time and you should do what's serving you, especially mentally postpartum. And if movement isn't it, then movement isn't it, period.
I couldn't unmute fast enough. I think that's such a great point, and I'm sorry that we didn't talk about that more because it is also maybe we'll have another episode. But
I
the
feel like we
3P,
always do this. We go
the
off on
3P
tangents.
that we were talking about, but I mean, that just quickly, that really speaks to me because I felt a lot of those pressures postpartum specifically because I've always loved to move and movement felt different to me immediately postpartum.
Mhm.
And I felt my brain going into those places of like, why am I doing this? and it took me a while to get to the place where it was like, no, this is for my mental health. This is
Yeah.
for my sanity. This is not for my body from a physical perspective. It's for my health. And I think it's difficult to get to that place when all you see when you search postpartum on the apps are, postpartum weight loss and get your body back and all that bullshit messaging. So thank you for
Yeah.
normalizing that. You've always done such a great job of that on your page.
Yeah. I just think there's so many better things to talk about postpartum than what we're gonna look like. It's so stupid to me. And I also think too, with the stressors, I know we have to end this, but with the stressors that come and all that your body's going through and the anxiety and everything, it's just like the last thing that I want people to ever think about would be to use movement as a way to like get back into it's just kind of like mentality wise, it's been a form of medicine for me. It's been an outlet for me. But that being said, with anxiety, it's like you never know what someone's going through. And the first thing people want to do is say, you look so great. You look great. You look great. You look great. I'm like, if I could take that phrase and fucking chuck it, because I just want you to ask me how I'm doing. Like, I don't want you to tell me what my body looks like. I don't fucking care. I just want you to ask me how I'm doing. Because a lot of times people, they're going through anxiety. Maybe they're not eating. Again, it goes back to commenting on people's bodies in general, but people love to do it postpartum to women. And so my messaging is just like, hey, ask people how they are. Let's stop telling them how they look postpartum. Nobody cares. Like, just ask people how they're doing mentally. That is what I want to know.
That is the name of this episode now.
Yes. And even though we may have not talked about, the fitness programming and whatnot that you do, I think anybody who is postpartum that's listening to this, like, they're hearing exactly what they need to hear from you. And I think it's most important to anybody who's going to start to move their body again postpartum is that they are getting obviously help from a professional, but someone who's saying the things that you're saying.
Yeah.
Because there are so many trainers out there that it is get your body back, bounce back after baby, etc. So everything that you normalize on this episode, I hope people can hear and they're going to want to come to your page to learn more about what you actually do. Because all of the things that you said today have to be in place to help people with movement.
Yeah. And you'll get it all on my page. That's the thing. I'm going to share, the numbing spray for postpartum. I'm going to share the hard times, the good times, the movement, etc. So come over for the shit show. That's what I say.
Danielle, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me on again.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of What the Actual Fork Pod. We know there are a lot of pods out there, and we are so grateful that you are here listening with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, like, share with all your friends and faves, and follow along with us on social at What the Actual Fork Pod. We promise to continue to bring you the hottest topics, greatest guests, and the most fun you can possibly have while fighting diet culture bullshit. We love you, we appreciate you, and we will see you next week for a lot more fun.